We interrupt your regular programming to bring you this breaking news bulletin from Canadian Cannabis Radio. It has happened. Prohibition has ended. Legalization has happened. Chaos ensues as crowds of blacks and hippies take to the streets, burning down doobies and rioting in front of the provincial cannabis stores where the only thing shorter than the tempers is the cannabis supply. We want weed, screams one long-haired reprobate. Swag, see, it's all swag, shouts another. The colloquial term for low-grade cannabis has become something of a battle cry for anyone hoping to catch a buzz from these foo-foo mids. But don't worry about it, kid. If you're growing swag, there's hope for you. Alex the Chemist and his colleagues at Next Leaf Solution will take your boof and blast it into distillate so you can add it to apple pies and malted shakes and all sorts of frosty beverages. Get real fucked up. Our cannabis correspondent Rich Terpene sat down with Alex at a recent Hempfest. Here's the tape.
Of the consideration of Bill C-45,
Do not agree that
an act respecting cannabis,
International race to the bottom to turn the stuff into vitamins. I love it.
I'll show you how powerful these little molecules are. Have you ever experienced it?
Take it all down with combines and blast it into distillate.
And it hit me like an explosion. Like I felt like I was on a balloon and I was on one level, then all of a sudden went whoo, and like right up to the top. And it affected me so powerfully, like I couldn't walk around.
What do you think of this room?
I think it's like movie time.
It's kind of rock star.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, dude, I'm taking a picture of you.
The
This one's
mock
over
room
to you.
photos.
What's that?
That's like the wardrobe.
Where they get changed.
So I should tell the folks where we're located right now.
Yes, the Hempfest.
We're at Hempfest.
Yeah. All right, so you've got the recording going?
It's going.
Okay.
We're hot.
Let me see.
Live to tape with Alex the Chemist. Check our phones too.
Oh yeah, I guess we should get that out of the way first.
Throw in an airplane mode. But
I should probably just get my phone.
You've been in there the whole time.
Just hung
You're just hanging out in the back.
I fucking love it.
Suddenly, a capybara appeared.
Amazing. I'm so glad I had that. I had the tape running for that.
Harrison
Let's all
Jordan,
text our families.
attorney at law, came out of the closet here live on the Rich Terpene Show
At Hempfest.
at Hempfest.
Wow, just so many fucking cool people.
I think I'm gonna go back out there.
If you want to just come in like
Come and go as you please.
mid conversation,
Come and go as you please. You're welcome to. You're welcome to join in. We're very easy going. Fantastic.
I just got a text from Dick Rocket. Not a porn star, by the way, an actual science or space guy.
Dick Rocket.
Yeah, he has a space intelligence company.
It's a social media personality.
A little bit of a personality. He's crazy, but I love him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's Dick saying?
He was just sending me memes.
A guy named Dick Rocket would send memes.
Yeah, he would completely. He's got cancer though, which really sucks.
A bummer.
Yeah.
For sure. Whenever
So,
anybody has
I think he's
cancer.
just going all out. I love him. Love his
Yeah.
spirit.
I have a friend of mine that's has a condition that he's not supposed to live past a certain age. He's got a certain kind of grab life by the horns.
You got to. That's one of the things I like about cannabis. It really makes you think about your life, and sometimes it terrifies you to the point where you're scared for your life. But you know, it really opens you up and really consider different perspectives and kind of shake you out of a low.
You had a little bit of time a few moments ago to sit and think.
Yes, I did. A beautiful massage by Lou over at Ganja Yoga. And if anybody's in Toronto, you got to go. Yeah, I got 20 minutes, but I think it was well over that time and just completely mellowed, relaxed. I'm on vacation here in Toronto, so.
And you got pulled into doing the podcast today. So I thank you for sitting down with me. I'm super pumped to have you. This is the second time that we're sitting down, although if anybody's listening, it'll be the first time because I blew the recording the first time. So
that was a fun one.
It was.
Yeah.
We had a really good chat.
So I brought Rich over to Ample Organics, and we did it like in a small room there. And I saw like, you know, John Prentice walking by and like all these other guys in the uppers. And they're looking in. It's like, oh, what's going on there? Oh, it's just Alex the Chemist. He's doing a podcast.
Yeah, contrast to right now where we're sitting in the green room,
Which is white, actually.
which is white, at the X, at one of the buildings.
Yeah.
At the X for Hempfest.
And it totally looks like a rock star or like movie diva scene with all the light bulbs around the mirror.
Much greasier shit has gone down in this room than we're about to do. So,
Whole lot of cocaine, I'm sure.
oh, no doubt, no doubt.
What's that powder? Oh, it's just dust.
Something. I wasn't sure where we were going to sit today and where
Yeah.
we're going to end up doing this, because the first time that we were at Ample Organics, I thought, were we going to be at Ample again? And is John gonna come strolling in? We're gonna be able to bully him into doing like a gram dab. We'll kick things off with like a gram dab.
He'd do it too. He'd lay it all the way down.
Oh,
I'm
that's
sure.
amazing. Of DMT.
Oh, DMT. Yeah, that's right. Oh my God. Hey, John, want to go to the other side?
I'm just kidding. We're simple folks. That's some rich man shit.
Yeah.
We're simple folks that
Talk about rocks.
at Canadian Cannabis Radio. We're bufotening kind of folks. Get John in there to give a toad a cat bath or something.
Yeah.
And here I told you that we weren't going to talk about psychedelics.
Oh my God. Yeah, but it always comes back to psychedelics somehow, some way.
Yeah.
It's like the cannabis is Godwin's law. Somehow it always comes back to some psychedelic state.
You can totally publicly condemn my wanton promotion of scheduled substances if you must.
No,
totally understand
I
that.
wouldn't dare. That would be a travesty. I wouldn't want that to be recorded.
Disclaimer.
It'd be used against me one day when psychedelics are actually legal.
Yeah, we need a disclaimer.
Alex the Chemist disparaged psychedelics.
The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are strictly that. Do not represent those of Canadian Cannabis Radio. So here we are. We're at Hempfest. Speaking of dabs, I'm really excited to have you on because you are Alex the Chemist.
Yeah, so I work in concentrates and I make distillate oil. I work for a company called Next Leaf Solutions out of Vancouver, BC. And we have a process patent and we have technology and different processes to turn trim and low-grade bud into distillate oil, which is the base product for vape pens, topicals, edibles, and anything that you want to really infuse. One of the things I'm really excited for is water-soluble THC, which will come down the pipes to add to the beverages. But once we get the concentration regulations, then we'll be able to see what kind of concentrates we can sort of spec our research and development toward.
And then we're going to see things like, single serving Kool-Aid packs, because I guess it all comes back to this unit dose thing, right?
Yeah. Well, I'd love to see the press release of Kool-Aid buying, like $500 million into Aurora or like Canopy or something.
There's a company in the States called DeepCell Technologies or DeepCell Industries, and they make a sort of a sugar, and their idea is to become the Intel inside.
Right.
Of whatever the Coca-Cola wants to infuse Coca-Cola.
Mm-hmm.
These guys just make bags and bags of this infused sugar, and it's some kind of a standardized. You put like your 5 milligrams. We'll probably see some kind of a cap on how much THC is gonna be put in there.
I have tried these water-soluble THC mixtures, and apparently at the dosing that I got, it was about 20 milligrams, and I can handle 20 milligrams like no problem. But when I had it in this form, it increased it went straight to the bloodstream, bypassing the liver, and it hit so quick, like 30 seconds, you start to feel something, and within 5 minutes, you're feeling this oral ingestion of cannabis, and it was so intense. So I think that when these water-soluble THC beverages are going to come out, we're going to see lower, like around 2-3 milligrams, maybe 5 milligrams. And like, it's almost kind of like comparable to an alcohol percentage, because if I were to have that much volume at, 20% alcohol, I'd be pretty intoxicated. But 20 milligrams has never put me out completely, and this did. I also added some terpenes that I had freshly distilled as well. So
this is cool. You were talking with the guys on the Cannabis Act about this at Grow Up, and I caught a little bit of it. I snorted terps.
You snorted terps?
Yeah, so I snorted terps. I insufflated them.
Oh my God.
It's kind of weird how it came about, and I now I'm sharing it with the world. I don't usually share this with people, but it's a good story. And
how intense was that effect?
I've never in my life have I been so fucked.
Whoa. Yeah,
Like-
I'm not surprised.
Like completely. And you described some kind of a hangover the next day, like absolute, like just a headache from hell.
Yeah.
I did it at a lower temperature. So I'll tell you the story here is I had this monster plant growing and I didn't have any bud to smoke, but it was pretty well finished. And so maybe a couple days when it wasn't dry yet, you know, I had heard that you could make rosin, with a hair straightener.
Yep.
And so I got the parchment paper and I made a little tube around the nugs. And I started to smell, and I set it just below 300. Essentially, I'm smelling to see when those terps start evaporating, and I'm like, oh, that smells good. And then the next thing I know, I'm just railing a big vapor fume of this White Widow it was, and it was fantastic. Oh my God.
Yeah, that must have been super potent and super powerful. Had you smoked a joint prior to, or had you consumed some cannabis?
I was coming off like a 20-hour shift, so I was
Okay.
also super, super tired, but I get really energized when I'm on the road.
Yeah.
Working. So it's not something that I've done since then, because I was like, that was pretty taxing on the body.
Let me tell you my first terpene experience. I'm not surprised that it affected you so powerfully. I have a friend rather, who works for Trinity Terpene as a reseller. And because I do a lot of talks on terpenes and these are the molecules that really fascinate me the most in cannabis, he said, have you ever experienced them? I'm like, actually, no. I've just read about them, and, in cannabis and whatever concentrates, but I've never had an isolate. So he said, why don't you come over to the green room that was up on Bloor Street in Toronto, and we'll do some, and I'll show you like how powerful these little molecules are. I'm like, great, let's do it. So,
and these are cannabis-derived terpenes, right?
Yes, they are. Yeah, supposedly. Well, we'll see. I'm always skeptical because I've seen some stuff I've heard.
Likewise, I have. But get back to your story. I don't want to interrupt you here.
So we sit down, we smoke a joint, and he's like, "Tell me when you're starting to come down from the peak." So I'm like, "Okay." And about 20 minutes later, after some good conversations and jokes, he's like, "So how you feeling?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm starting to come down now." He's like, "Okay." So he takes out this little tiny bottle. Like a 1 milliliter bottle, and it's like half full. And he opens it up and he starts to warm it on his hands. And he's like, okay, now you want to smell this for about, 25, 30, 40 seconds. So he starts doing that. And then he passes it to me, and it was blueberry. So it was apparently from the blueberry strain. And I'm smelling it, like getting right up to my nostril and, deep inhales. And it hit me. Like an explosion. Like I felt like I was on a balloon and I was on one level, then all of a sudden went whoo, and like right up to the top. And it affected me so powerfully, like I couldn't walk around.
Really?
Yeah, like my motor
just from a little like smelling salt.
For about essentially a smelling salt of terpenes for 45 seconds, smelling it in the green room in Toronto. And I was so, and then it like triggered my anxiety. It was so powerful. And I managed it, but it was like, ooh, wow, this is quite intense.
That's one thing that I did notice when I did it as well, was that I was bobbing around the place.
Yeah.
Like bobbing around the place, and my eyeballs were darting back and forth.
Yeah, you get your amygdala starts spiking.
So that was my wild terpene experience, I guess, was insufflating some terpenes one time.
You're rich in terpenes.
I am rich in terpenes. It was super cool. It's cool to think of all these different ways. When I was a kid, we didn't have Shatter.
Yeah.
We had you could smoke a joint.
Brickweed.
Well, I mean, I'm not that. I don't go back that far. That's before my time. I was pretty well always a weed snob.
Yeah.
Right from the first time I started smoking it, because I had older cousins and
millennials.
They always had good. Yeah, spoiled. You had RSO. You had a little bit of RSO, and you would smear it on, or you had maybe some BHO. Back in the day, but how did we get to the dab? What has been the evolution of the dab?
Oh, like
from an extraction technology standpoint, walk me through the process from, the first kind of simple Stone Age extractions and into like where we are today and some of the like the wild things that we're doing to isolate some of the different compounds within the cannabis plant?
So I'm not a historian on it, but I do know the evolution was first in like tubes and glass pipes, having a screen and zip tying or fixing the screen at the end, and then having a like a metal cap or a metal disc with a hole in the center that you place on the glass tube, and then you'll take a butane can, turn around, and sometimes you can use one of the adapters that they have on the lid to fit whatever hole that you might have available.
Yeah, like a blasting tube.
Like an open blast. And then you have typically like parchment paper inside of a glass baking tray. And then you press, and you'll probably go through, 1 or 2 butane cans if you have about an ounce or somewhere around an ounce. Then you'll squish it, squeeze the butane into the tube. It'll run through, and it's a liquid. So it'll pull out all those non-polars as it's running through the tube.
And does it really cold as well?
Oh, it does, and I'll tell you why, because when you evaporate gas, it's an endothermic process, which means it needs energy from its surroundings. So it takes all the heat from its surroundings. That's why it gets really cold, which actually helps and benefits the open blast, so long as your tube isn't too long, because you're going to freeze the water solubles and the water in there.
This is what I was told, is that, you're going to get less chlorophyll. You're going to get, a cleaner,
yes.
More of what you want and less of the things that you don't with that system. Now, of course, there's obviously risk to doing so in a, in a home setting. Mm-hmm. And so, we heard all these horror stories of people blowing up their basements and, doing blasting, shatter indoors.
Yeah.
And then I guess in the case of you have your what do you call that when you got your pool of liquid butane and
it's just
what you got a name for it?
The crude extract, essentially. It's just the crude extract.
The goo.
Yeah. And and then like it bubbles off, and it's quite effervescent, and you can put it on like a hot plate. Some people do this outside, and I'm not condoning this.
This isn't a recommendation.
This is informational.
Informational, 100%.
But they'll put on a hot plate, or even better is the double boil. So they'll boil water and they'll put it in a big bowl, and they'll put the tray inside of that, because then it's never going to go above like a flash point on double boiling. It's called like a bowl within a bowl, and that first bowl has a lot of boiling water. It helps reduce any chance of ignition, but nothing's perfect.
So the guys that taught me, they had a little hood with just a little fan going, and we essentially just left it in a warm, dry spot. Not like a purging oven, but like a poor man's purging closet, I guess you could say.
More like a range hood.
Yeah, something like that, and just low and slow, and just let it sit there for weeks in the dark. Yeah,
and then you still have some butane within the matrix of the cannabinoid and terpene, and some waxes, and there's still going to be some of that, but. By and large, it's mostly evaporated out, because butane's fairly volatile.
So that was kind of an upgrade on the RSO. So the RSO was kind of the first, the alcohol extraction, or the iso extraction was kind of the first, the first one, and then we went into this. This was kind of an upgrade, and a little bit more technology, a little bit more risk involved.
Yeah, and then I went to the closed loop system from the open blasting, and engineers started to think, okay, well, we can put this in a complete closed loop and recirculate and capture that butane in the end. So we can recover that solvent, reduce costs, have it all pressure rated so that there's no explosions, or reduces the chance of explosions. And then that's the thing I really love about the cannabis industry, is because even though botanical extractions is as old as man, we have these new technologies that are being developed specifically for cannabis, and for their purpose built. So with the closed loop systems, they're a lot safer. You can put them in a pot, and then a lab like ours would have purging ovens where it's vacuum. You heat it up over a certain amount of days, and then you could essentially purge out the butane.
It's essentially a laboratory process like any other,
That's it.
Any other industrial process that's done in a lab.
A lot of the processes in cannabis extraction are old hat. Like they've been known for hundreds of years. It's just applying it and then tuning the parameters or the system.
So it's throughout the years of Prohibition, it's kind of been this counterculture, and they've been developing the knowledge, and now we're at a point where you guys have a business and you've amassed all that knowledge just from years of experience, on the bleeding edge, working with patients and working with these LPs to develop systems that work within their, I guess, business model.
Yeah, and it's a great business model to take somebody who has a wealth of experience in the medical market and surround them with scientists and engineers and other people to help build and capture and write down and solidify their intellectual property, which they've been developing for decades.
And I would argue,
at great risk to themselves.
I would argue that extraction is a great business model for you guys as well, because the first time you and I sat down, we talked about this, this kind of progression of the cannabis industry and how the first step is the plant.
Yes, yeah, and there's four main trends I think are going to be coming, and that's first, it's the isolation and separation, isolation, and purification of cannabinoids and terpenes, because then you'll have the materials to start to do formulations. So if you want to do, and I actually just talked at Grow Up about how cannabis science will inform product development, and I talk about what compounds are in the plant that are available, what receptors we have in the brain and the body, and what those phytochemicals in cannabis, which receptors they hit. And then you can say, okay, well, if I want something that's a little more sleepy or more sedative, I'll get something that hits the GABA receptor. Or if I want something that's more stimulating, I'll get some pinene because that blocks the acetylcholinesterase enzyme. Same thing that coffee does.
Absolutely, and it's really easy, as a grower to kind of throw stones at some of these big producers with these massive greenhouses for, growing swag. But at the end of the day, it's all going to be extract material, or it's all going to be, if that's going to be the medicine. Where, you're not going to give somebody a fucking bud.
Yeah.
And say that's medicine.
Yeah, here you go, smoke it.
Yeah, no, it's going to be.
You have COPD here.
Yeah, it's going to be farmers, selling, as Daryl Hudson said, selling molecules to pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
And there will be that market, and then there will be, still the ultra premium flower that, everybody knows and loves. But I believe, too, that anything that we export is going to be barrels of molecules.
Yeah.
Phytocannabinoids and isolates and these things that you said. And then you're able to develop and standardize your blend.
Yes. Yeah. And I think formulations are going to be a big hit, especially in the cannabis industry. Because one of the things we know and love about cannabis is the variety of experiences that we get. And that's because of the different ratios of the terpenes, cannabinoids, and, to a lower extent, flavonoids if you're looking at oils. And, we can separate these compounds and just target what kind of ailments we want to alleviate, or what kind of symptoms we want to relieve, what kind of custom-made, designed experience you want.
Right, and here's a dose. Take one of these gummies, or in the case of like vape pens and carts, take one pull on this, and you're going to get this much of this. This is the profile of cannabinoids and terpenes that you're going to get out of this single pull.
Yeah.
And that's a way to standardize, the consumption of extracts for, the recreational market or the medical market, whatever you want to call it. It's really tough to send somebody in and I don't expect to see grams of Shatter.
Yeah.
Right. Sold at the OCS or through.
Although I would love to see that.
I would totally love to see it. I don't think that we're going to see right off the bat grams of Shatter. I think that if, there's any kind of concentrates like vapable products, it's going to come and there's going to be like a unit dose, a max unit dose on the pen, and then probably on the amount that I don't know you're allowed to get out of it. But I think that's silly. I don't think it makes any sense, because you'll just sit there and just suck on that pen for 5 minutes longer if you need to get a little more out of it. But just kind of based on the ignorance of the regulators up to this point, it's not inconceivable that they do something like that.
Yeah. No, I think that we talked about this on the Cannabis Act as well. There's a couple of different mindsets about legalization. I'm on the pro legalization, that I think that even though it's not perfect in what we would all want, I think that this is an amazing step in the right direction. And it's one that we shouldn't squander, and we shouldn't, engage in negatively. We should engage in it positively. We should, if there's something that you don't like, then talk to other people about it, talk to politicians and get involved. But I've heard a lot of people that this is Prohibition 2.0. And I think that's a little bit hyperbolic because, what the liberals have given us is an opportunity for a platform, a foundation. And laws always change, especially if people want it. And I think, I believe in the cannabis industry. And I think that when people see the benefit, especially compared to alcohol or other drugs, especially when they start to substitute other harder drugs for cannabis, I think that the regulations will be relaxed and we'll start to get some of these higher tiered concentrates and different products.
No, absolutely, and we need the conversation in order to move that dialogue forward, in order to allow that to happen. Otherwise, we just have these two sides where I as a grower am again hurling stones at the Tweeds and the Afrias of the world for not using virgin blackstrap molasses, and raising their own guppies to feed their.
Are you a plant nerd?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a plant nerd. I actually have a couple of aloe vera in the car.
I love it.
I rode up with them because I donated them on Instagram to Aloe For Africa.
That is beautiful.
And so, and she just so happened to be here.
Nice.
So I just messaged her before we started, and I was like, don't leave without your aloe, otherwise I'm going to be driving around with these things.
Yeah. It's funny enough, my dad was trying to give away to hawk off some aloe to some people in the neighborhood when I was visiting him.
Tell him to send them to Aloe For Africa.
Aloe For Africa. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell him about it.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring you a plant.
Oh, I would have loved it, but I can't take it on the plane, unfortunately.
I didn't. I was pretty sure that there might be some issues there. So I wanted to check with you first because I've got they're Williamsii cacti.
Ooh,
They're
interesting.
They're Lophophora Williamsii cacti and peyote.
Yeah,
of course.
I would love to treat one of these little beautiful cacti and grow it out like it should be at some point in my life. You know what we should get?
I got it sitting on my windowsill. It's got a little. When I get home, it's gonna have a little name tag on it. It's Alex's cacti.
Nice, Alex the cacti.
Alex the cactus. It's a cactus in this case. It's just one.
We'll make a Twitter handle folder. It'll blow up.
Yeah, I gave one to Daryl.
Nice.
Gave one to Daryl at one of the last expos. I don't know if it's still alive. He's a pretty busy dude, but cacti are they're pretty hardy things.
Yeah. Hashtag Peyote Bros.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I like to give everybody something, that comes on the podcast. I like to bring them something.
It's very gracious of you.
Well, I like to spread. That's what this podcast is all about: is spreading the love, spreading the joy of gardening.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not an expert on extraction. That's why I like to have guys like yourself on. I'm not an expert on the industry, and but I want to engage with the industry because I think that, as you said, this is about moving forward, and this is the way that it happens is by sitting down and talking about the things that are going to make the difference to the cannabis community.
Yeah, and I think you should keep doing this and really expand because you've got a great talent. You're a fantastic interviewer. You are technically knowledgeable.
You're far too kind, sir.
Oh, my friend. I've seen so many people in this industry who started off and they have that positive mental attitude to grow and evolve and learn and be mentored. And now I see them all over the industry doing amazing, great things. So, and that's the thing I love about the cannabis industry. A few years ago I was depressed and, I did everything right, went to school, got my degree, but for a year and a half, I tried to get a job to no avail. And then that's actually what started my whole cannabis journey. I was on SSRIs, anti-anxiety medication, and Adderall just to balance it all out. And then I shared a joint with my dad on his 50th birthday, and it opened up this whole new world. And not only has this provided me with a great career, but it's allowed me to self-actualize, to really dream about the next stages of life.
I talked about this with Graham Jones with Cyto of the Canalist, and he said it's one of those things that there's no other, I'm probably butchering his quote, but there's no other plant or mindset or just eating, anything that you can just give it to most people and say, if this improves your life, then use it. And so I don't, even though cannabis doesn't help with my anxiety and doesn't do some of these things that other people claim that it does for them, I've learned to not discount their claims that this is helpful, to them, because it does impact everybody differently. And I found that, when I did have a lot of anxiety going on in my own life, that smoking a ton of super potent cannabis didn't help me in those situations. But as I said, I would never say that that's not right for anybody else. Likewise, I'm not a fan of, myself using any kind of pharmaceuticals to manage my, mental health issues. But I will never tell anybody that that's not right for them.
I agree. And a live and let live for any kind of substance that helps somebody is the right policy, I think. It's the patient who suffers, and we all have different genetics. We all have different issues. We all have different lived experiences. And who am I to say that this won't help you? The only thing that I ever caution is be educated about it. Understand what it's doing in the brain and the body. Look at the health risks. Make a balanced assessment, and also compare it to other things. Because sometimes just changing your life, eating better, exercising, and going out, getting involved, and not allowing yourself to lean into those negative thoughts and feelings will help out a lot of people, and is a significant part of the pie chart. And I'm somebody who's suffered with depression, anxiety, and ADD all my life, and it wasn't until I came to cannabis that I could really manage it myself. And sometimes cannabis is not good for me because it just ramps up my anxiety. I get paranoid, and once I go down the rabbit hole of paranoia, it gets pretty deep. So I always caution people that even when it does help you, doesn't mean it's going to help you all the time. And it's important to listen to yourself, have trusted people around you to act as sounding boards when you take anything, not just cannabis. Because I think that isolation is also a component of this. And when we try and hide ourselves away and take a drug, it'll help you manage the symptoms, but the core isn't being worked on.
That's it, dude. I say use it to make your life bigger.
Yeah.
Use anything that you use. Use it to make your life bigger, and only you can be the judge of that. So that's the message that I try to promote, because I have younger siblings, and they remember transitioning from this time when they were too young to know what pot is and too young to know that I smell like it. And now they're starting high school, and we're starting to have these conversations, and it really makes you reassess your own relationship with it. I love to, it's in everything I eat. My sweat stinks like pot. But I really want to be honest with myself about why I'm using it. I'm not sick. I use it because I like it. I use it as for wellness, and the way that many people use it. And I want to teach my little siblings, if they choose to use it when they're old enough, I want to teach them responsible non-medical use, and that they don't need to feel like they have to be sick in order to enjoy this if they choose to enjoy it. It's an unpopular opinion to go spouting at all the cannabis events, but I think it's an important one, and I think that if we're able to have that conversation in an honest way, that will convert a lot more of the naysayers.
I'm a radical centrist, and I really believe that there's good and bad in everything. It doesn't matter what you're looking at, because somebody's going to have a different perspective and a different lived experience and different needs and desires. So I think that with my own experience with cannabis, I've only been using cannabis for about 4 years. It'll be 4 years on November 8th. And I went through oh my God, this is amazing. There's no downsides. There's no hangovers. To be honest, it's hard to get up some days because, especially if you're consuming medicinally at night to help you go to sleep, it can affect my morning. And I think it's important to be honest about these things. That's not taking away from anybody else's experience.
No, or the benefits of it at all. It's just, it's as well, if you're going to have first-time users, it's important to explain to them what to expect.
Yeah. And it can be quite intense. It can be anxiety-inducing sometimes for me. And it's only because I'm used to that intensity that I can sort of manage it and not have it affect me. But I went on a tolerance break for about 2 weeks very recently. And then when I sparked up again, it was super intense. I was so high I couldn't believe it.
Dude, I did this once for a couple weeks. It's so funny.
Yeah.
I didn't smoke weed for a couple weeks one time, and then when I started to when I did, I was actually paranoid as fuck when I first got stoned.
Yeah, it hit me. And you know what I was thinking? I was like, I now have the experience again of feeling the intense effects of cannabis. And any first-time user is going to feel something like this. And that's why I think it's very important to, say, hey, look, it can be intense and you got to watch out.
And not only are they going to feel something like that, but they're not going to really be expecting it. You don't really know what to expect.
That's right.
And I think that it's easy for a first-time user who's going to smoke it to not really feel anything because, you don't inhale or, whatever the case may be, or you're expecting to see unicorns or whatever it is, and then you don't.
Not one. I've not seen one unicorn yet. I'm disappointed.
You're expecting something super intense, and then you end up with waiting for it.
Yeah.
Right? That's everybody's first experience smoking pot is you're just waiting for something to happen. You're like, no, I don't think it's
like a half tab of acid. You're waiting for the beat to drop.
Never done acid. Never done acid. I got it. It's on the bucket list, but I like to be responsible about sourcing everything that I do, and everything has to be right as far as set and setting goes.
100%.
And as well with everything that's going on in your life, I think that's an important part of set and setting.
Yeah. Well, that's a conversation I'd love to have at another time. It's definitely I think psychedelics from a lot of people that I know who have used them are over the moon with how they've helped them for their own mental illness, for their own PTSD, and just understanding different perspectives on their own life. And I can't wait for more research to come out.
Absolutely.
To really corroborate a lot of these claims.
Absolutely. Harrison, where'd you get that candy, dude?
From the expo floor.
The expo floor is littered with candy and food.
I have some chocolate bars.
Get this, smoking it actually suppresses my appetite. Eating it turns me into, as my friend Bob would say, the cookie monster.
That's because the THC interacts with the PPAR gamma receptor, which is also in the digestive system, which controls the leptin and ghrelin hormonal systems and signaling. And basically the end result is just this voracious munchies.
So that's the science of...
That's some of the science, yeah.
Some of the science of the weed munchies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like to think of everything as a biological, or from a biological first principles basis. And that was actually the part of the title of my talk, molecules, receptors, and formulations. Oh my, how cannabis science informs product development, or how I learned to love biological first principles. Because when you think about things on like the basic mechanisms of how we're being affected, you get a much deeper understanding. And I think that you appreciate the experience a lot more. It's no longer just some nebulous thing you put in your body and it goes and it hits the brain and it does these things. But when you can actually chart out, from the plant, it grows, it has these molecules, you ingest it through the lungs, into the bloodstream, hits the receptor, intracellular signaling. Like, I really love thinking about that whole pathway.
Some shit going on there.
100%. And, that was one of the things I talked about in at Grow Up, was how we know about the cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2. But the cannabinoid receptors are part of a larger class of receptors called G-coupled protein receptors, GCPRs for short. And they signal within the cell after a ligand attaches to a receptor on the surface of the cell. And depending on what molecule, or we call them ligands, but they're basically just molecules that hit the receptor, what we call the conformational change of the receptor will actually shift and move. The receptor will change. And then that will have an effect underneath the cell where it will release different compounds. It'll signal to something. And cannabis, one of the things it does is interferes with the calcium channel. Part of the thing that calcium channels release is neurotransmitters. So you can go from the plant into the body, hitting the receptor, going into the cell, and there is a electrically induced neurotransmitter release happening from this. And then that's how we get happier. That's how a part of the brain gets activated.
And there's a lot of shit in the extracts other than THC and CBD. Duma Wenshu from Province Brands said that this is where it's upon us as the industry to be good shepherds, because you can put 5 milligrams of THC in something, but an awful lot of some other kind of cannabinoid or terpene that's not necessarily regulated or limited by the unit dose, and get, as we were talking about, some pretty profound effects. So that's where it's kind of upon us to make sure that we don't have these episodes, so that the regulators in the first 2 years don't decide, well, that was a bad idea.
Yeah. No, I think we should be all responsible, but there's always going to be companies that push the boundaries. So let me tell you what happens with terpenes.
Yeah, please.
Inside. So on the surface of the cell, in the neurons, there are cannabinoid receptors, but there's also receptors that terpenes will hit. And these are called transient potential receptors, TPRs. And these receptors also affect the calcium signaling. And there's a lot of feedback between these and cannabinoid receptors, where the same neurotransmitter, anandamide, which is one of the endocannabinoids, will hit the CB1 receptor, but it will also hit the TRPV1 receptor. That's one of the known ones. And TRPV1 is, if you ever have eaten spicy food, capsaicin. I would think we talked about this.
You guys did talk about it, because I brought some peppers.
What are the scorpion peppers?
Trinidad Moruga scorpions.
There we go. We made an allusion to the Simpsons episode where the Homer ate those chilies. But anyway, so when you eat capsaicin, it will activate the TRPV1 receptor, and that's where basically it's like, oh my God, basically it sensitizes the receptor so much that your own body heat makes you feel like you're on fire.
It blows my mind that it's not just like, when you eat it. Like, it's like if you get it in your eyeball, it sucks, man.
Yeah, you got washing hand protocols.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And
nitrile gloves.
Not even nitrile. Like, you need heavier duty ones. Like
really?
Like dish gloves.
It'll sink through the glove?
Yeah, like I've been wearing gloves before, and I've gotten just this really outrageous pain in your nail beds.
Holy shit.
Like after cutting them up. So I make a pepper sauce.
Amazing.
Put one pepper, in a thing of like honey and some, peaches and shit, like sweet shit.
Yeah.
And an onion. Oh, some vinegar.
Nice.
Just nothing but that, and like a little bit of cilantro. Oh.
I need to get one of these jars off you.
I'll hook you up.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I didn't try it on the cannabis sack, but I would love to try it at home.
No, I'll get and it's you can't just eat a raw pepper. That's fucking stupid. You gotta like actually.
Yeah, no, that has to go on YouTube if you do.
Yeah, 100%. I have a buddy that I'll see if I can air the clip of him eating it. I'll see if I can put it on the website. Just
like waterworks all over his face.
Oh yeah, and he was he afterwards, and he's like a big dude. He's got his tattoos all over his knuckles and a big beard, and he ate one of these things, and it was of course a spectacle. And then afterwards, he looks at me and he's like, dude, he's like, at one point he's like, I was crying, and I was like, well, you were crying from pretty well the whole thing. He goes, no, emotionally. He's like, I was.
No, that's deep.
He's like, I was scared that it wasn't gonna stop, and it just kept getting worse, and I was terrified. It just kept getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and it was pretty special. It was a pretty special thing. But he was talking shit. He was like, I'm gonna eat 2 of these things, blah blah blah, and I was like, if you eat 1 of these things,
yeah.
Like I'm fine with that. That'll be entertainment enough for us.
That's hilarious. So yeah, with terpenes, they will hit these different receptors that are endogenously linked with the endogenous cannabinoids. So anandamide will hit the CB1 receptor, but it also hit the TRPV1 receptor. Both are on neurons within the brain. And depending on whether or not these things get activated, different parts of the brain will get either excited or will deactivate to a certain extent. And this is the basis for understanding the effects and how the molecules that you grow in a plant will affect you in the brain and the body. It's one of the things I'm just completely obsessed and fascinated with. And in this talk, it was the first time I had done this talk. One of the things I want to do is make YouTube videos sort of explaining some of this, because I think that it's really important for people to understand what's happening, and help rationalize the experience.
100%. And as we move towards, as we were talking about before, vape pens and cartridges, we're going to have to move away from this language of blueberry OG and into
terpene dominant strains.
Absolutely. Terpene dominant strains or some kind of a profile, like somebody's got to develop some system, for classifying, the different terpenes. Jonathan Page.
Yeah. Of Nandia.
Yeah,
Shout out. Dr. Jonathan Page.
Dr. Jonathan Page.
Oh, and Canopy would not be like, oh no, that's Aurora's thing. We're going to have our terpology thing.
That's right. Everybody, one person develops some fucking standard, and then everybody else has to develop their own standard, and then everything's got this stamp of like fucking this guy's approval.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think you just need the two basic pieces of data. What terpene is it, and how much of it is in there?
Yeah, like or a graph or whatever.
Yeah.
These are the 3 dominant terpenes.
How you chart it or visualize it, whether it's bars or a pie chart or anything like that, is besides the point. But unless you have those two pieces of data, then it's kind of pointless. That's I mentioned the canopy because they have this terpology circular graph that has, I guess, the relative ratios, but there's no numbers. And unless you have the numbers, it's that's great if you have myrcene and beta-caryophyllene and some linalool in there, but like, how much?
Yeah, and I mean, again, to me, it's easy to throw rocks at these guys, but what the fuck does it all mean anyways? I mean, we don't have enough of the data to even say at this point that this much of this means anything. That's why all of this, that's why Lyft and Leafly and all of these, they're built, on patient feedback.
Yeah.
And people, it's just a database of people's experiences.
Yeah,
And
we're kind of figuring out how cannabis really affects people kind of backwards.
And it's kind of the best we have at this point.
Yeah.
And it's not a terrible way to go about it. It's just everybody tell us how you feel.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's why I really enjoy companies like StrainPrint. They have this app where you can put in, especially if you're with an LP, what cannabis you're consuming, the strain, your ailment, and it'll start to probe you with questions after, 20 minutes, half an hour. Is this alleviating your anxiety? Is this actually helping your back pain? Is it helping you sleep?
Oh, really?
And then it can get all this patient data, put it in a server, aggregate it, machine learning, pick out trends and correlations, and then that could be a starting point for, hey, I wonder about this, because when we look at strains with linalool, they seem to have a decrease in anxiety, whereas pinene, it seems to shoot that right up. So we'll start to see corroboration of the data with anecdotes and some of the mouse models, because that's the thing. Like, even one of the slides in my presentation, I actually have a cautionary rat tail, because there's most of our information about what receptors these are hitting are from mouse models, and it's not a one-to-one analogy between rats and humans, although it's a good guidepost. And I think that companies like StrainPrint, where they aggregate this data and pull out these correlations, that's where we can have a starting point as a guidepost.
For sure. And I think that in addition to that, it's easy to throw rocks and say, well, that it's up to the growers to grow that strain so consistently. But even if this isn't perfect right now, when we do have concentrates, when we do have standardized extracts, it's going to make a much bigger difference, and it's going to be able to provide people with a much more realistic picture, because the crops are so inconsistent at this point that, somebody may be getting this, White Walker Kush, for example.
Yeah.
But the next time it's got a completely different terpene profile or something that's not really, again, because it's not required to be tested for. Mm-hmm. We don't have those results. And again, it comes back, in my opinion, to the kind of the ignorance of the regulators and the newness of the whole industry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the future is going to be great too. Well, we're going to look back and be like, oh my God, we're so primitive back then. They didn't have terp profiles. What the hell?
Yeah, no kidding. And the way that we describe things and the way that we treated things,
the indica sativa and there's a whole debate.
But I mean, we got to tell people something.
Yeah. Well, hey, even I use the shorthand of sativa and indica or hybrid, or because it's convenient.
I do as a grower.
Yeah.
Because it makes a difference to me as a grower.
That's because there are morphological traits that are.
When I refer to sativa, I'm not just referring to
the effect.
The effect. I'm referring to a tall, lanky, long flowering strain.
Yeah.
With narrow leaves.
Yeah, exactly. I think the nomenclature breaks down when you look at a so-called sativa plant, and it'll knock you out on your ass.
Yeah, and then you go to like places, like I was in Patrick and I.
Oh, nice.
Patrick and I, 420.
From Ethical Image.
Yeah, Patrick. That's right. I got to give him a plug. Patrick from Ethical Image. We were when we were out west. We were in one of the dab bars there.
Oh, nice.
And they've got premium dabs.
Oh yeah, what are those?
Premium dabs.
Never had one of those.
It's the high terpene full spectrum extracts, the HTFSE.
Yeah. Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
So just the acronyms are getting out of hand.
So you could probably tell us a little bit more about what that is.
Well, essentially all it is just, capturing more of the terpenes and having a more of a full spectrum of cannabinoids.
And that's done through like a colder extraction, and they do something with the sauce. They make the sauce. They make this butane sauce, and they have the diamonds, and I got a buddy that does it, and he puts it in the purging oven in the jar.
Yeah.
With this sauce in it.
Yeah. So diamond mining, that's another whole thing. That's like growing crystals, and you can make crystals pretty quickly.
So you put a seed crystal in there.
Yeah, but you can also just take it right out of the cannabis. Like one of the things we're doing at Next Leaf is just experimenting with crystallization and how fast can we do this, and we're developing technologies and processes around it. So you can do that fairly quickly, and we've done this successfully. But what if you want those huge diamonds that you see on Instagram? It takes a bit more time to actually grow those out.
Right. What's the benefit to this big thing? Or is it just bragging rights? Like it's
bragging
just a
rights.
Big fucking
yeah. No, it's Instagram. Come on.
It's the top
it's
cola.
Look what I got. Yeah, it's the top cola of the extract industry. Look at my diamonds.
That's crazy. And then what else is there? So there's the high terpene full spectrum extracts. So that was the premium dab. Mm-hmm. It was nice. It was fantastic.
Did it feel premium?
It felt really premium. I was sitting indoors.
What city was this in, by the way?
It was in Van.
It was in Van. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was in Van. So we went to the one above the Amsterdam.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And, there was maybe 3 or 4 spots to go to. So I think we tried to hit them all. I think we missed one of them. But we were sitting there and we were just amazed at this. We're in a fucking establishment. There's some dude just came in a fucking suit, took his fucking coat off and sat down, put his briefcase down, took his laptop out and started doing some work. And he's,
Wait, was that me? What day was it? I've been known to do that once or twice.
It definitely wasn't you. But I said to him, I was like, this is it, dude. I was like, this is the future. I was like, this is the future. And that's it feels like treachery as a grower, as a flower guy, for me to say that I think that, dabbing or concentrates of any sort is the future, because you can take fields of it and you can blast it into distillate and isolate the things that you want. And it can be a really flavorful extraction, and it can be delicious with an indefinite shelf life. I'm just talking out of my ass now, but it tastes so good. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, dude, this has got to stop. And at the same time, this is amazing. We need this in every city, because how fucking awesome is it that I can come in here, I can sit across from you, and we can rip dabs. And we'd had a couple beers in us at the time, and I was like, thought for sure.
Hyperpolarizing those GABA receptors.
I thought for sure I was going to be like, oh man, I need to go sleep, but we were good to go.
Yeah.
Good to go.
Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, those vape lounges will also have dry bud vapes. Like every single vape lounge that I've been to will have either an Airize or Extreme 2, or they'll have a volcano
or something.
Yeah. The standard. And, I think that's great, because you can bring in your own cannabis, especially if you're a grower, and you can treat people to your wares.
And I'd love to do. I'm between cycles right now, so I got nothing to smoke on. But at the Lift Awards, I brought like a quarter pound.
Nice.
In a jar, and I just.
Here you go.
They had these big, massive, grinders, the size of dinner plates, and I was just filling these things and just filling those party bags and passing it around. And I won't name any names, but there was the who's who of the Canadian cannabis industry. And we would come together over a volcano bag. And then a half hour into just laughing and shooting the shit, they'd say, what do you do? I'd say, I grow pot and I'm a journalist. And their asshole would tighten right up, and they'd say, oh my God. And I'd say, don't worry, everything is off the record.
Yeah.
We're just two enthusiasts. You guys shareholders, I got fucking, nobody's going to talk to me if I just tell everybody's dirty secrets. So.
That's right. You got it. That's when you're a journalist, you have to know when to keep the secrets.
This is just a way for me to meet cool people, and a way for me to spread the love of growing. And I'm glad that you could come and sit down with me today, dude. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, anytime, Rich. You're a great guy. I think that you're going to go far if you continue this. Sincerely.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to get Harrison on here next time, and
he's eating candies.
He's eating candies.
Got candies all over his shirt, smiling. Our local resident attorney at law.
Yeah, he's. I was about to spark up a joint in here, and he told me that he can't have my back if I did that.
No, he would advise against that.
I'm just kidding. He's thumbs upping me right now. Let's blaze that shit up, bro.
Do you have any Jolly Ranchers left, Harrison?
Let's go on a food run. Let's go on a food run and smoke a joint.
Let's do that. I need to medicate.
Thank you so much, dude. Thanks
Hey,
again.
Rich, this was so fun. And brother, anytime you want to do this, you just let me know.
Well, that's it, folks. And that's all of it. It's over. It's all over. The end of an era. The golden age of virtue and moral rectitude gives way to madness. A vile, wicked cloud of darkness will smother our children, corrupt our women. Farmers will cease to grow our food, choosing instead to grow grass for the devil. Now we're hearing the Indians want to get involved. Next thing you know, the Mexicans will be coming to eat your lunch. What will this mean for the good Christian sons and daughters of our nation? As mayhem takes over, one thing is certain. There is no stopping this hullabaloo. Go home tonight and hold your wives close. Prepare for the impending apocalypse and the inevitable descent into vice and degeneracy that precedes it. Stay safe, my friends.